Have you noticed how, with each passing year after 60, you've become increasingly selective about who you spend time with? Perhaps you found yourself declining social invitations you would have once accepted without hesitation. Or maybe you've realized that after certain social gatherings, you feel unusually drained, as if something fundamental has shifted in your relationship with the social world. The ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus once observed that it is not the young man who should be considered fortunate, but the old man who has lived well, because the young man in his prime wanders much by chance, vacillating in his beliefs, while the old man has docked in the harbor, having safeguarded his true happiness. What harbor was Epicurus referring to? I believe he was describing that quiet inner sanctuary many of us naturally seek as we age, a place where external validation matters less and authentic connection matters more. But society often misinterprets this natural evolution, labeling it as antisocial behavior or withdrawal, when in reality, it may be one of the most profound psychological transformations of our later years. I'm Vernon. Today, we'll explore 6 evidence-based psychological reasons why many adults avoid people after 60. And pay close attention when we get to reason number 4. It contains an insight about boundaries that might completely transform how you view your changing social preferences. Wisdom grows when it's passed on. Subscribe the channel to join a growing circle of mindful aging, and share this video with someone who might be quietly navigating these changes too. So, let's take a closer look at the 6 deeper psychological shifts that may be guiding your quiet, conscious retreat from the crowd. Reason number 1. Socio-emotional selectivity. Known as socio-emotional selectivity theory, this concept, perhaps the most well-researched explanation for our changing social preferences as we age. Pioneered by Stanford psychologist Laura Carstensen, the theory reveals something fascinating. As our perception of time shifts from time since birth to time left to live, we begin to prioritize depth over breadth in our relationships. We don't necessarily want more social time. We want more meaningful social time. Consider my friend Margaret. For decades, she maintained an expansive social calendar and rarely declined an invitation. Yet over the past few years, she became increasingly selective. During one of our walks, she shared that she no longer feared missing out. She feared wasting time. To her, there was a difference between simply spending time with people and spending time with the right people. What Margaret articulated from lived experience, research supports empirically. A landmark study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that as adults move into their 60s and beyond, they typically maintain fewer social contacts, but report greater emotional satisfaction from the relationships they choose to keep. This isn't social withdrawal, it's emotional wisdom. When we're younger, we often accumulate connections for career opportunities, social validation, or novelty. But after 60, those motivations fade, replaced by a desire for authenticity and emotional reciprocity. We aren't becoming antisocial. We're becoming more discerning. One simple strategy for honoring this emotional shift is to create a relationship audit every season. List the people who energize you, the ones who drain you, and those you've lost touch with but still value. From there, set small intentional goals, perhaps deepening one bond and gently releasing one obligation. Your instincts towards selectivity aren't something to fight, they're something to trust. They're a hallmark of psychological growth and emotional refinement. Reason number 2. Energy conservation and recalibration. My colleague Richard, a retired professor now in his early 70s, once reflected on this shift in his own life. He explained that it wasn't a matter of liking people less than he used to, but rather that social interaction had begun to cost him more. He had come to realize that he needed to budget his energy differently, being more intentional about where and with whom he spent his time. Our second reason flows naturally from the first, but deserves its own attention: the profound shift in energy economics that occurs after 60. Rather than simple physical fatigue, which may contribute, Richard's observation highlights a more complex shift in how we manage and prioritize our energy as we grow older. Research from the National Institute on Aging has documented that many adults over 60 experience what scientists call increased social fatigue threshold, meaning it takes less social stimulation to reach a point of emotional and cognitive fatigue. This isn't a dysfunction, it's an adaptation. The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of what he called authentic existence, a state of being in which we align our choices with our true nature rather than conforming to social expectations. As we age, many of us are simply moving toward this more authentic alignment between our energy resources and our social choices. Maybe you've noticed that while you still enjoy gathering with friends, you now prefer smaller groups to large parties. This isn't a sign of antisocial tendencies. They're indications that you're becoming more attuned to your own energy needs. This connects beautifully with our first reason, the socio-emotional selectivity theory. As we become more selective about our social investments, we're simultaneously becoming more attuned to the energy costs of those investments. Do you allow yourself to decline invitations when you sense your social energy is depleted? Learning to respect these new energy patterns isn't selfish. It's an essential form of self-care that enables you to be more fully present in the relationships you do choose to maintain. You might be surprised how many people feel this shift but haven't yet found the words for it. If you've experienced a similar recalibration of your social energy after 60, share your insights in the comments. Your story might give language and validation to someone else's unspoken profoundness. Reason number 3. Heightened value awareness. With time, there's often a quiet shift, a deepening awareness of what holds real value in our social lives. We start to prioritize sincerity over surface and substance over obligation. As we've explored the first two reasons, our natural tendency towards socio-emotional selectivity and our shifting energy economies, we can now see how these changes create the foundation for a deeper transformation in how we value relationships. When my neighbor Maya moved from Tokyo, turned 65, she made a decision that surprised her family. She resigned from several community committees she'd served on for decades. Eleanor responded with remarkable clarity. For 40 years, she's offered her time to groups where politics and posturing dominated. Now she chooses to spend her time only in relationships where authenticity is valued. That's not withdrawal, it's wisdom. Eleanor's insight aligns perfectly with research from the University of Michigan, which found that adults over 60 consistently report higher standards for what constitutes meaningful social interaction. This isn't about becoming judgmental, it's about becoming more discerning. At Old, many of us naturally gravitate toward that third category, relationships based on genuine virtue and shared values, while finding less satisfaction in connections based merely on utility or entertainment. Sometimes, it's not about how many people we connect with, but how deeply we choose to connect. That's what shapes the richness of our later years. If you feel this rings true, hit the like button to help more people discover this quiet but powerful philosophy. Remember, this increasing selectivity isn't a limitation, it's an expression of developing wisdom. Reason number 4. The wisdom of boundaries. There comes a point in later life when clarity replaces compliance. What once felt like duty, saying yes, keeping peace, staying accessible, begins to feel more like self-betrayal than virtue. This shift is subtle, but it marks one of the most profound psychological developments of our later years. the emergence of what I call the wisdom of boundaries. Unlike the rigid defenses of youth, these later-in-life boundaries are rooted not in fear, but in self-respect. My friend Thomas, a retired physician, often reflected on how his understanding of care had evolved with age. During his professional life, he had made himself constantly accessible to patients, colleagues, and students, equating availability with compassion. But in his later years, he came to realize that genuine care, including self-care, required clear boundaries. He shared that he had finally learned to say no without guilt, and as a result, his yes had gained far more meaning. Research from Northwestern University revealed that adults over 60 show increased activation in brain regions associated with emotional regulation when setting boundaries, suggesting that this ability strengthens rather than diminishes with age. The Swiss psychologist Carl Jung observed that the first half of life is devoted to forming a healthy ego, the second half to going beyond it. In other words, our earlier decades focus on establishing our place in the world, while our later years invite us to transcend social conformity and connect more authentically with our true nature. This wisdom of boundaries often manifests as a decreased tolerance for relationships or situations that once seemed acceptable. Perhaps you find yourself less willing to engage with chronically negative people, or more likely to decline events that don't align with your values. These aren't signs of social withdrawal, they're expressions of healthy boundary setting. Are there relationships or social obligations you've released that once felt mandatory? Establishing clear boundaries isn't selfish. It's an essential expression of self-respect that ultimately enhances your capacity for authentic connection. Reason number 5. Deepened inner life. As we grow old, the beauty steals inward. The philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson seemed to anticipate this shift when he wrote, "Many older adults describe a quiet but profound shift in focus as they move into their later years, turning inward not out of isolation, but out of richness." This brings us to another key psychological transformation, what we might call a deepened inner life, an expansion of the internal world that often emerges after decades of externally focused living. The demands of career, parenting, and constant social engagement begin to ease. Many discover new dimensions of self that had long been set aside. This isn't withdrawal from life, it's a fuller engagement with a part of ourselves that now has space to breathe. Elaine, a retired teacher who recently turned 72, describes this evolution beautifully. In her younger years, she was constantly seeking stimulation and connection outside herself. Now she finds that her inner world thoughts, memories, reflections, creative impulses is so rich that she needs significant time alone to explore it fully. She's not avoiding people. She's embracing a part of herself she neglected for decades. Research from the University of California found that adults over 60 who regularly engage in contemplative practices, including meditation, journaling, creative expression, or simply quiet reflection, report higher levels of life satisfaction and lower levels of perceived stress than those who maintain primarily externally focused lives. This deepened inner life connects with our earlier discussions. Socioemotional selectivity naturally creates more space for internal exploration. Our recalibrated energy economics often directs more resources toward inner development. Our heightened value awareness helps us recognize the worth of contemplative time. And our wiser boundaries protect the space needed for this inner work. Importantly, this inner richness doesn't necessarily diminish our capacity for meaningful connection. Often, it enhances it. The person who has developed a rich inner life often brings greater depth and authenticity to their relationships. How has your relationship with solitude changed over the years? Share this video as a gesture of your own inner journey. Someone else may be waiting for the insight you've already found. Reason number 6. Emotional intelligence evolution. Our final psychological shift involves what research now confirms is a natural evolution in emotional intelligence that occurs as we age. Contrary to cultural stereotypes that associate aging with decline, substantial research shows that emotional intelligence, our ability to understand and manage emotions in ourselves and others, actually increases with age for many adults. David, who recently turned 68, reflected on how his relationships had shifted with time. In his younger years, he often tolerated emotional drama without fully recognizing it or knowing how to set healthy boundaries. Now, he said, he could identify manipulation or inauthenticity almost instantly, and he simply chose not to engage. While some might label that withdrawal, for David, it was a clear expression of emotional wisdom. What David is describing aligns perfectly with findings from Stanford University's landmark Emotion and Aging study, which demonstrated that adults over 60 show superior emotional regulation and conflict avoidance strategies compared to younger adults. This emotional evolution creates what psychologists call enhanced affective selectivity, a heightened ability to discern which social interactions will provide emotional fulfillment and which will create emotional distress. Socioemotional selectivity becomes more refined as our emotional intelligence grows. Our energy recalibration is guided by improved emotional awareness. Our value discernment benefits from emotional clarity. Our boundary setting becomes more effective through emotional wisdom, and our inner life deepens through enhanced emotional understanding. It's not that we become less social, we become more emotionally discerning. Reflect on your own emotional evolution. How has your ability to navigate complex emotional situations changed over the years? This growth in emotional intelligence isn't isolation. It's a sophisticated development that allows for deeper and more authentic connections. Finding balance. Solitude versus isolation. As we've explored these 6 psychological shifts, socio-emotional selectivity, energy recalibration, heightened value awareness, wiser boundaries, deepened inner life, and evolved emotional intelligence, an important question emerges. How do we honor these natural changes while avoiding true isolation? Because while all the shifts we've discussed represent healthy psychological development, there is a meaningful difference between chosen solitude and unwanted isolation. The key difference lies in whether our reduced social engagement is a conscious choice aligned with our psychological needs or an unwanted state that causes suffering. Finding this balance requires honest self-reflection. Here are 3 questions worth considering. First, do your periods of solitude feel restorative or depleting? Healthy solitude energizes. Isolation drains. Do you maintain a core of meaningful relationships even as you become more selective overall? Healthy solitude exists alongside deep connections. Isolation replaces them. Last, can you move fluidly between solitude and social engagement based on your authentic needs? Healthy solitude is flexible. Isolation becomes rigid. You need to embrace your natural evolution toward greater selectivity while remaining vigilant against isolation. The wisdom lies not in resisting these changes, but in navigating them consciously. Your changing social preferences aren't a problem to solve. They're a development to understand and honor. Conclusion. The poet Mary Oliver asked perhaps the most important question. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? As our perception of time shifts, this question becomes more urgent, guiding us toward more intentional choices about how and with whom we spend our remaining days. Whether it's through socio-emotional selectivity, energy recalibration, heightened value awareness, wiser boundaries, a deepened inner life, or evolved emotional intelligence. These changes represent not decline but development, not withdrawal but wisdom. Have you noticed these shifts in yourself or others? How have you navigated them? Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Leave a comment to share your insight, or simply write, "Reconnect," as a reminder that you understand these aging changes. If you found value in this exploration, share this video with others who might benefit from understanding these natural changes. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notification for more insights on navigating life's later chapters with grace and purpose. Understanding the psychological shifts that come with age is essential to embracing your full humanity at every stage of life. Thank you for joining me.